A team that I am extremely excited to talk about, the Auburn Tigers. Let's do a college football preview. I'm going to talk about the stars for this team, major storylines, losses and additions to the roster, an X-factor game in their schedule, and then, of course, a record prediction. Let's hop right into it. Talking about the stars for this team offensively, we've got the skill group that I am extremely pumped to see. Cam Coleman, true freshman wide receiver last year, big play receiver, 600 yards, 8 touchdowns. If it weren't for guys like Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, Alabama, Cam Coleman would be a guy that is in the national conversation for breakout wide receiver year in year 2. But some of that might be deflected because of his running mate, Eric Singleton. In my opinion, the best route runner in all of college football. 754 yards, 3 touchdowns last year at Georgia Tech. When I'm talking about acceleration, I'm talking about Chris Johnson with the Tennessee Titans type acceleration. Eric Singleton's footwork is off the charts. He is an otherworldly route runner, and I'm extremely excited to see what he has to offer for Auburn. And then the last guy I want to talk about, the captain of this offensive line, Connor Lew, junior season coming up, already has 15 starts under his belt, and is rumored to be an NFL prospect as a junior center. That is pretty rare. Usually when you see guys coming out for the NFL draft as a center, they are either seniors or redshirt seniors. So Connor Lew has a really good upcoming season coming up. I believe he is close to being a preseason All-American. This is a guy to watch out for when talking about the NFL draft this upcoming year. Now, speaking of the NFL draft, let's talk about the defensive side of the football. One of my favorite players in basically all of college football over the last few seasons, Keldrick Falk. An athletic freak. I'm not trying to be, overly hyped about him, but this guy is almost one of one in my opinion. Edge rusher for Auburn, 7 sacks, 45 tackles last season. He is going to have to be the commander of this front seven. And I believe he's up to the task. Looking at his body, he's 6'6", he's built like an Adonis. I think he's going to have a breakout season and be maybe the best edge rusher in the SEC. Now in the secondary, this is where it matters. A transfer, Rayon Strader, comes in from Miami, Ohio, a zone hopper, 29 pass deflections. Once again, 29 pass deflections in the last 2 seasons. When you talk about a guy that can jump routes and lock up wide receivers, he is your guy. Now, on the other side of the secondary, Kayan Lee, 7 pass deflections, 29 solo tackles last season, extremely physical, a bump and run type corner. I'm extremely excited to see what he has to offer. Kind of a cover 3 dream, if you ask me, like a cover 3 lock where you have one guy in zone, one guy in man. These two dynamic duo, I believe, can be one of the best secondary units in the SEC. Moving on, let's talk about a storyline that I think everybody has talked about for this upcoming season, and that's Hugh Freeze in year 3. To me, everything is riding on year 3 with Hugh. Some people have rumored that the boosters or the funders of the NIL program have stopped giving money. They want to see results on the field before they continue to give their dollars. It kind of reflects in the 2026 Auburn recruiting class. We shall see what comes of this. Hugh has a ton of pressure coming into year 3 after a 6-7 and 5-7 season. He has yet to have a winning year. Speaking of that, it has been almost 5 years since Auburn has finished the year with a winning record. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the longest drought since the 1940s in Auburn football program history. This is one of the lowest times of Auburn football, and in my opinion, that makes this season all the more important. In my opinion, this is the most impactful, pivotal year in Auburn program history since Cam Newton back in 2010. That says a lot because Auburn went to a national championship in 2014, went to an SEC championship, I think in 2018 or 2019. So we've seen some really good Auburn teams, but this year there's so many implications on the line. If Hugh Freeze goes 4-8 or 5-7, I think he gets fired. Auburn has to press the reset button again. I don't know if they're still paying Gus Malzahn. I think they're still paying Brian Harsin. And then they would also have to pay Hugh Freeze. That's paying 3 coaches to not coach your program. That makes you one of the laughing stocks of the SEC. So with that being said, this year is extremely important for Auburn to build continuity and consistency heading into the 2025-26 season. I cannot stress the importance of this year enough. I think a lot of fans are expecting 8 wins, and I think it's very possible. Now, let's talk about the losses and additions to this roster. First up, the losses. Jarquez Hunter, he is the number 1 guy that Auburn loses, and in my opinion, he was underused last year, but had 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think almost every single game that I watched with Auburn football, outside of maybe a couple, I was thinking to myself, why do they not just give the ball to Jarquez Hunter 10, 15 more times a game, and they will probably be way more competitive than they were. With that being said, he leaves, he gets drafted to the Rams, and then a couple of other guys that also go to the NFL. Keandre Lambert-Smith gets drafted to the Chargers, 900 yards last year, one of Auburn's best production seasons in the 21st century. I don't think Auburn's had a 1,000-yard receiver in quite some time. Keandre Lambert-Smith was one of the best ones that they've had in program history. And then Jalen McLeod, linebacker last year, 56 tackles, 8 sacks, was the leading sack producer on the team last year. Now, Keldrick Falk, I think, will pick up some of that slack this upcoming year. But defensively, losing some of that juice, that's not good for Auburn. But they do bring in quite a few additions to this team. Couple of guys I want to talk about to shore up this offensive line. Xavier Chaplin comes from Virginia Tech, 25-game starter. Somebody that is mentioned in the All-ACC honorable mention conversation. In his senior year, can he have a, not resurgence, but a breakout year in the SEC? I think so. He's rumored to be in the NFL draft prospect conversation. I definitely see it. Mason Murphy, another offensive tackle to shore up this offensive line, comes from USC, 22-game starter. 39 games total that he's played. When you talk about experience being one of the key factors to succeeding in college football, especially in the SEC, Auburn has that on their offensive line. Now, moving into the rest of this offense, you've got Jackson Arnold, who I could mention as a star player for this offense, but I'm going to pump the brakes. He is a former 5-star recruit who never really got his wheels going at Oklahoma, especially as a passer, but I will get to him in just a little bit. And then to wrap this up, Eric Singleton, who I've already mentioned, and then Rayon Strader, who I've also already mentioned from Miami, Ohio. I just want to emphasize one more time, 29 pass deflections. I don't care if it's group of 5, power 5, that is extremely impressive over 2 seasons. So moving on to the last 2 couple of storylines, Jackson Arnold, like I said, former 5-star recruit, comes into Auburn, has never really developed as a passer, but every now and again, you can see why he was a 5-star. The arm talent is there. The athletic ability is there. I think he could be a good dual threat quarterback, but you've seen just a lot of questions about him in the offseason. Apparently, DJ Durkin is trying or having to take it easy on him in training camp and fall camp because Hugh Freeze wants Jackson Arnold to have confidence, which honestly I understand because somebody like Peyton Thorne, who got benched multiple times in his college football career at Auburn, I'm sure he didn't have that much confidence. Whereas Jackson Arnold has not had to deal with that with the Auburn Tigers. So you want him to go into the season feeling like he's the man. I get it. What I want to say, though, is I have to see it to believe it. Once again, the talent is there, but he has to prove it to me first before I believe in him and make him a quote-unquote star of this team. And then last thing I want to talk about, this schedule is extremely hard, but there is magic at Jordan-Hare. I mean, the GOAT of college football, Nick Saban, said that stadium is haunted. I fully believe it. Auburn in the last 12 seasons is 12-12 against top 25 opponents. And for the vast majority of those years, Auburn was either 20 or ranked 20 or lower in most of these games. I mean, massive upset after massive upset. Auburn in the last 15 seasons has had some of the greatest upsets in college football. The win versus Georgia where they tip the pass and he catches it and returns it, the kick six. Even the game last year versus Texas A&M, the multiple overtime game, the miracle win versus a top 10 team expected to push for the college football playoff. Those are the games that happen in Jordan-Hare. I think it can happen again this season with Georgia and Alabama coming to town. We've seen Auburn do it before, and we might be able to see Auburn do it again. Now, X factor game to me for this team is Baylor. This is a tone setter for the season. It's whether or not they're going to get to that 8-win mark, in my opinion. Game number 1 at Baylor. Let's hop right into the record prediction. First up, of course, the Baylor Bears on the road. I think Auburn can get it done. Now, this Baylor Bears team, hardly anybody in the mainstream media, specifically somebody like Paul Feinbaum, has not really talked about this being a massive matchup. I think that it is. Program-wise, they're in the same boat. They're expecting an 8 or 9 win season out of either of these programs. I think Auburn has the talent edge. They get the job done regardless of the home field advantage. Moving into a couple of gimme games, Ball State, South Alabama, Auburn takes care of business there. We saw them do that last season at the beginning of the year. I think they'll do it again. At Oklahoma, that's a tough game. I think Oklahoma, talent-wise, has a top 15 roster in the country. I cannot yet say the same thing about Auburn, and I think playing at Oklahoma is a tough game. Once again, the Sooners came into Auburn last year and beat them outright. Now, Auburn did have a massive lead against them, but I do think Oklahoma, the roster, is way better than they were last year. Now, the same can be said for Auburn, but the home field advantage is the factor there for me, so I think that's a loss. So 3-1 at Texas A&M. I think A&M, especially the offensive line and the front seven on defense, that's a national title contender type team. I don't think Auburn can compete with them on the road. Second loss in a row. Georgia at home. Once again, a dicey game where anything can happen, but Kirby Smart has beaten Auburn time and time again. I think he can do it one more time. Gunnar Stockton is questionable as their starting quarterback, but I don't know if Auburn has the requisite talent on defense to match up with Georgia on the offensive line. So third loss in a row. Now, 3-3 heading into the second half of the season. Let's get into it. Missouri at Arkansas, Kentucky at Vanderbilt. Mercer, win, 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 win. 5 wins in a row. Outside of Missouri, who is at home, I think Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, those 3 teams will have coaching questions, possibly coaching vacancies, and I don't think in the SEC that is a good thing. When you look at other Group of 5 teams or maybe other Power 4 schools in the ACC or the Big 12, a coaching change can kind of rally the troops. I don't think that happens here, especially in the modern world of college football. I think a ton of players are starting to look the other way into the transfer portal. And I think Auburn, if they can get it rolling with Missouri at home, build the momentum that Hugh Freeze is here to stay, then I do think they can go on the road and beat Arkansas. They can go on the road and beat Vanderbilt, who I think is unbelievably overrated. Stay at home and beat Kentucky, and of course, take care of business versus Mercer. And now we're talking about an 8-3 team heading into Alabama at home, the Iron Bowl. Once again, similar to Georgia, Alabama usually knows how to take care of business versus Auburn. I think Alabama this season is a national title contender. I can't say the same thing for Auburn. If you told me they won the Iron Bowl, I would not be shocked. But to say that I believe today that Auburn will outright win the Iron Bowl versus Alabama, I would be lying to you. So to close out this season, Auburn is 8-4. They've beaten all the teams that they're supposed to beat. I think they can be competitive with Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama. And then, of course, going into a bowl game against another school that's probably a similar record, if they can win that and go 9-4, that is a massive leap that Hugh Freeze needs to head in to Jackson Arnold's senior year, Cam Coleman's junior year with tons of momentum. So that being said, that's my college football preview for Auburn. I'm extremely excited to watch this team this year and see how this all plays out. This is going to be one of the most talked about football teams in the SEC. So be sure to hit that like, the subscribe, and then be sure to comment. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.